We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
You are listening to The Underground Marketing Conspiracy, a secret ritual where entrepreneurs acquire highly classified and confidential business knowledge that the top 1% of income earners don't want you to know. And now, your host, Maddie Milligan.
What is going on, my fellow conspirator and conspirators? Welcome to another episode of The Underground Marketing Conspiracy. Woo! Now, this episode is for people who are employed. They have a 9-to-5 job, and what that means is they need to work somewhere for someone else for about 8 hours a day, maybe even more, maybe work the graveyard shift, whatever it is. You work some sort of full-time job, generally 5 days a week, probably 40 hours per week, something like that. And you're probably in a place where you want to stop doing that and work for yourself so you have more time to spend with your family so that you can really get more out of life, so you can live life on your own terms. Probably the thing that you want most, though, is freedom and not having other people to tell you what to do every single day. I know for me, that's the way I was, and I think for me it took a little bit longer to leave my job than the average person, right? It took me a while to build up that confidence and finally take that leap of faith, and I knew it was something that I should have done a lot sooner, but I just kept procrastinating, being like, should I do it now? Should I do it now? And even though I had enough of a buffer where money wasn't necessarily an option, and I already had a few clients that I was doing work for on top of my full-time job, I just was like, I was so scared to just take that leap of faith, right? I had so much fear inside of me and anxiety. I was thinking about all the bad things that happened. So if you're working a 9-to-5 job and you're trying to start your own business, this episode is really for you. Now, for me, it was easier as well because I don't have much overhead cost, right? I don't own a car. I don't have kids. I'm not married. I don't have a mortgage. I don't have any of that stuff, right? So for me, I didn't necessarily need to make that much money to replace and supplement my standard income. But having a full-time income plus what you're making on the side, oh man, you're making some bank in some cases, right? But maybe you do have kids and you have a mortgage and you have debt. Totally feel for you, right? I can't imagine what you're going through because I don't have all of those things right now. But I can give you some information that'll hopefully help you take the right steps. So I talked in the last episode about creating your personal brand, right? And how to actually use social media. So I think that's the first thing that you need to do. Get over your fear, start creating more content, start engaging and building community, and really building a following around what you do. And then from there, you can sell really anything you want, right? Whether you want to do affiliate marketing, whether you want to do network marketing, whether you want to do drop shipping, whether you want to build a marketing agency, or maybe you have some sort of physical product or some invention that you want to create. Heck, you can totally do that, right? If you're working a 9-to-5 job, though, you're going to have to plan your time and stick to your schedule, right? That's something that you're going to have to do. And you have to block out those 8 hours or 9 hours or 10 hours, whatever it is for your full-time job, or maybe you work 2 full-time jobs. You're going to have to really organize and schedule your time in advance and stick to it. But then at the end of the day, you're going to have to book in 1, 2, 3 hours where, again, you're going to do that engaging, right? Where you're going to spend that time building your personal brand. You're going to spend time creating content. You're going to spend time researching and learning more and more about the business and the industry that you eventually want to transition into full time. That's what I would really recommend doing. And in some cases, sure, you might stay up late at night and you might not necessarily get as much sleep. And I believe sleep is super important. You should definitely be getting 7, 8, 9 hours of sleep per night every single night, because that is not even an option. You need to do that. Obviously, if you have young children, you need to take care of them. That's a whole other story. But you need to have that time set aside where you're working on building your business. And I didn't do this at first originally, to be honest. I just was very lazy, and I'm like, I'll get to that eventually. And even though I knew the steps, I wouldn't follow through and I wouldn't implement. And I would always regret that. And I don't want you to regret that. So if you do want to, this is where, again, go and listen to the last episode I recorded, because I talk in that episode about how to build your brand, right? But when should you quit your 9 to 5 and really follow your dream and your passion? That is a big question, right? This is when I would make sure you're making at least as much money as you're making right now in your full-time job, and giving yourself a little bit of a buffer, giving yourself minimum 3 months buffer, right? So if you're making $5,000 a month per now, and then you manage to get it up to where you're making $5,000 in your business, awesome. Leave your job, but have $15,000 saved, right? That'll allow you to pay rent or pay your bills, or make sure that your young kids have diapers, make sure that you can feed them. One thing too is that even if you do end up failing, you can always get another job. Like, it's not that hard. There's so many jobs out there. People are paranoid about automation and how robots are going to take over and start doing all of our jobs for us. We're not at that level yet. Maybe in 30, 40, 50 years, maybe we will be. Maybe that'll eventually happen. But humans will always, if you have skills, there'll always be people that want you, right? Which is, again, why you need to work hard. You need to, even if you have a crappy job that you don't like, you need to have that integrity and give it all you've got, right? But you need to have that buffer where you have enough money really saved up so that if something does happen, it's like, I'll at least have enough money to, put food on the table. But even then, I mean, I live in North America, right? I live in Canada, and this goes for all the other first world places. You can always find food for your family, right? Like, sure, you might want to save face and be like, oh, I don't want to go somewhere, and I don't know, you might not want to necessarily go somewhere and eat inexpensive food, or you might not necessarily want to eat at you might have to take a step down in your status, right? You might have to not eat as much out as you recently did or you like to do in the past. You might have to just, again, downgrade your lifestyle a little bit and sell some things that you own. And that's not that bad. You can always get those things back. But I found that people, when they achieve a certain amount of status and a certain level of life, they will do anything to keep and maintain that, right? So I really wouldn't worry too much about that. If you're worried about not feeding your kids, honestly, I think the biggest problem in the world is that people eat too much instead of too little. When you look at all the diseases that exist out there, diabetes, heart disease, stroke, cancer, I believe that a lot of those are caused by the nutrition in the standard American diet, right? The SAD diet, or it's just called SAD in general, which is pretty upsetting. But when you look at North America and first world countries, our problem is not our kids eating too little. It's them eating too much of the bad things, right? Too much of the wrong things, rather. So your kids will, again, for them, it's like, I'm sure you have family or friends where worst case scenario, you could always go out and get them to help you feed your kids. Like, I wouldn't worry too much about that. Again, I live in Canada. It's a very socialist friendly place. So people are very willing to help their neighbors and random people, right? They're very likely to help out strangers. And I think that's one common thing. And people always find themselves in bad places, sure. But this is why I think, again, having those 3 months buffer room is like the perfect sweet spot, right? Where it's like, all right, I give myself 3 months. So worst case, I can always get a job. That way, again, if it doesn't work out the first 2.5 months, it's like, all right, let's spend the next 2 weeks like finding a job, right? And then again, you go back to the job and you do that same thing again. Like, I've seen other people do that, and I have one friend who did it, and he didn't want to talk about how he had to go back to his job. And I was like, dude, like it really doesn't matter. Like, those people are actually probably going to respect you more because it's like, oh, look, I failed, right? And then again, you're like, oh, I stuck at it, and then I quit my job again, and then everything went fine after that, right? Because that's what happened to him, but he doesn't want to talk about it. He's too afraid to. But you just need to put yourself out there, right? I talk about vulnerability and putting yourself out there. And quitting your job, for me, it's really the freedom, right? The freedom to really work the hours that I want, go where I want. It took me almost 5 years, though, to get to the point where I am right now, right? Where I can live the laptop lifestyle, where if I really wanted to, I have the money and the funds and the means and the energy and the resources. I could go anywhere I want right now in the entire world. Like, I kid you not, I could do anything I want. If I wanted to go to Italy and drive Ferraris right now, I could totally do that. If I wanted to go chill on a beach in Thailand and sip mojitos, I could really go and do that right now. If I want to go to some exotic island and just sunbathe for a week, I could go do that. But here I am in Canada, super cold, right? And my eventual goal, I haven't really talked about this before, is I do eventually just want to get my own piece of land somewhere north of the city, a few hours north, and build a log cabin, right? And my main thing is, I'm like, okay, how do I build this log cabin and get a good enough internet connection to make enough money to keep funding the lifestyle that I have right now? And that's a long-term goal, like over the next few years, to be honest. But again, it's taken me a while to get to this point, right? It's not like something where it's like, oh, I just up and decided and everything worked out. There's been a lot of things that haven't worked out through the process. It's been just that, though, right? It's been a process, but I planned it out, right? I'm like, okay, once I have minimum, for me though, I set more than 3 months, to be honest, like way more than 3 months, because I'm very risk averse, and that I'm just like that by nature because I've been burned a few times. But I recommend 3 months, right? Like having that 3 months, so making sure you have enough to pay all of your stuff for minimum 3 months. And then I think that's the perfect buffer that you need to have, right? And again, that's going to give you the freedom. For some people, it will take a little bit longer to get to that point, depending on where they're at in their life. If you have a mortgage, or you have kids, or you have car payments, or you have student debts or loans, it's going to take you a little bit longer, right? I want you to be realistic. Having said that, if you have a really great idea and it takes off suddenly, heck, I mean, if you've been working on this for a while too, you could be days away, right? You could be hours away from getting that freedom, quitting your job, working for yourself full time, right? And keep in mind, like, if you've ever read Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, he talks about the cash flow quadrant, right? Where number 1 is you're an employee, number 2 is you're self-employed, 3 is you're a business owner, 4 is you're an investor. So being self-employed is still working a full-time job, right? You'll have a little bit more freedom, but in a lot of cases, because you're doing so much and you're wearing so many hats, you might not necessarily have as much, which is ultimately why you need to get to level 3 as quickly as possible, right? Where you own your own business, where you have systems and people in place so that money is just kind of coming to you. And then if you're like me, you don't need to worry about getting an internet connection in the woods, right? You can just buy some land in the woods, go up there, cut down some trees, build a little log cabin, do a little Wim Hof in the lake or river, and not worry about that at all, right? But again, it takes some time, save up money, have at least 3 months worth of money so that you and your family are fully taken care of. And worst case scenario, you can always get another job. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, I want you to consider subscribing. Consider sharing this with someone or tagging them that you found interesting. Maybe you can email to them and be like, oh, I listened to this awesome thing. I know you want to quit your job ASAP. Maybe they would enjoy listening to this episode of the Underground Marketing Conspiracy. I am your boy, Matty Milligan, and I will see you next time. Woo!